Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. My name is Gary.
This is Mike.
And this is Daniel.
Well, gentlemen, we have another listener's email. And this one's a pretty good one.
This is a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a great one.
Okay, this one is not signed at all.
Yeah.
You're right.
No,
It's not.
signed at all. So, anonymous, I suppose. All right, but it reads, "Hello, I am a woman who compulsively seeks sex and romance online. I have a great deal of fear, embarrassment in addressing these issues and getting help. Most everything I read and see about sex addicts refers to men and their behaviors. This makes me feel like a woman can't have this problem, or she has to be even sicker to have it. Yet I think I am a sex addict and I'm really struggling with this." Now,
Let's give her a name.
let's give her a name.
Sarah. Let's just go with Sarah.
We're just going to go with Sarah. Sarah,
yes.
First of all, welcome to our podcast.
Yes.
Right.
We are thrilled you're here. My thought with this is, I'm going to be honest with you, Sarah. I remember watching Phil Donahue. This is gonna date me a little bit. So
Yeah,
you're all
that was
aware.
the 80s.
I remember coming home from school and I'd catch up on 5 or 6 different TV shows, one of which was the Phil Donahue show in the afternoon. And I remember Phil Donahue was hosting at the time Patrick Carnes. I remember that episode. And when he indicated, so this would have been the 80s or 90s,
Yeah.
and he indicated in the 80s or 90s that he treated sexual addiction. And he was almost completely laughed off the stage in 1980.
Yeah.
Or in 1989, 1990. The idea of sexual addiction was so not a thing as early as just 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So the fact that all she finds is stuff supporting men's addiction in the universe of sex does not surprise me, because this is sort of an evolutionary. The disease itself is sort of evolutionary, and the treatment to it seems to be fairly evolutionary as well.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it that it is now a men and women problem.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But the material probably lends itself an awful lot right now to men. I've been at my own recovery now for 6.5 years, and I remember the very early conversations that we had with our common counselor, who was treating very few women at the time. His practice right now is about 40 to 50-50, something like that,
Yeah.
60-40, somewhere in that.
60-40, yeah, it's pretty close.
It's pretty close to that. So this is not just a gender-biased disease. It just may be that the material itself out there that you're finding may not necessarily be up to speed yet on.
And I also wonder,
on women's issues.
Is it because of, she's embarrassed.
Sure.
She definitely says that.
Oh, do you know what?
Is it because that maybe there aren't as many women coming out and saying, hey, I have this problem, where
Sure.
compared to men, let alone men are the ones that are normally the ones that are found out, and so
Right.
they have to go. And maybe that's the reason it's more tilted towards men, because that's just the trend.
That's just the trend. That's right.
It takes, the fortitude to stand up and say, hey, I have this problem, like you're doing now.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
that's...
The fact that she recognizes she has compulsive behavior and that these things play out in a certain way
Yes.
is powerful indication of the fact that an addiction exists and that she has a problem. She wants to get help.
Oh, in fact, everything about this, there's not even a question. There's not a question in this email.
Yeah.
There's no questions in it. It's just a plead for help.
Yes.
And that really, I don't know, it finds a home.
It does.
Yes.
It hits home.
Hits home.
Yeah.
It makes, so very often, Sarah, the very hardest thing to do is to ask for help.
Absolutely.
And you've done that,
Yeah.
In
a very anonymous way.
Yeah.
We had to assign her name to her, but
you
she did.
Yeah,
But she
she's
did.
the last.
And
Yeah.
that's no small thing.
That is
it
not.
really is no small thing. So, asking for help, I mean, absolutely brilliant. Now, sex addiction is very much, it's not gender specific. It's
not,
just
correct.
not. It might manifest itself differently in women and men because, we approach sex a little bit differently.
Which means the treatment may be entirely different as well.
But I would definitely say, if embarrassment is a huge issue, there are the wonders now of like telehealth and
Yes.
things like that, where you
Yes.
can actually speak to people and start getting help and keep your anonymity.
Right.
There are certainly a multitude of 12-step programs that are online
That may be women only.
that may be women
Yep.
only, that are also you can also do that with it. In fact, if you need to make up a name for yourself, you can go ahead and use Sarah. We'll let you use it.
Yeah.
We haven't trademarked it or anything.
That's
so
right.
That's
but so it's out there and it's available, and I don't think you definitely don't need to be sicker. I think that's a wrong idea.
right.
Right. I don't think that men corner the market on this, or
No.
But I do think this is painting with a pretty broad stroke. But I did a little bit of research before we started recording, and it says that typically speaking, women have a tendency to feel a lot more shame and guilt.
Associated with this.
Associated
and I
with
think
it.
she expresses that in,
Yeah.
in her email.
So even that's a very typical response.
Right.
You know.
Right. I think some of the places to early start. I mean, I know that the SAA programs have women-only programs, and that there are some of those that you can connect with remotely, and that would be a great place to start, because one of the things it's going to definitely do for you is create a support system
Yes.
in place, and I think that's helpful.
It's necessary.
The other thing, the great thing about CSAT trained individuals is there are those that are trained for men, there are those that are trained for women, and there are those that are trained for couples. And so I would highly recommend that you do some research and find a counselor who is specific to women-specific issues. And I know that there are a couple in the state of California. I remember hearing a couple of those online as I was listening to a couple of podcasts with my wife. So I know that there's some stuff that's out there. But finding it may be tough. But any CSAT specialized trained counselor could probably help you along the path and then refer you, because I know they also network amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Do you know? Patrick Carnes may have actually been promoting this book on the Donahue Show. But do you remember reading "Don't Call It Love" by Patrick Carnes? Do you remember
That was
one?
actually the book he was promoting on this episode. Yes,
It's
that was
been
one
up
of
for a
his
while.
very first written books.
The reason I bring it up is because when I read that book, in the book it addresses women in some of the stories and things like that. There's a lot of stories or anecdotes or things like that in the book that are specifically from women, and there are chapters and material in there that address the problems and talk to that demographic. And the reason I remember that is because it really surprised me.
Right.
When I first started my recovery, I was surprised that women struggled with this kind of a thing too. But
So it'd be interesting. I want to spend just a second with Sarah, just talking about some of the things that her behaviors are probably an indication of. And though I know we're not, specialists in this particular area, but if we talk about this in terms of a disease of escape, there's clearly something about her behaviors that are indicating a need to escape from something. So one of the places I would certainly start, Sarah, if I were you, would start to looking at things that happened in your life in your childhood, things that happened that happen on a daily basis that create a tremendous amount of anxiety. Some of those things may be, let's suppose that you're a student at school and you're stressing about exams or passing this particular thing or doing well enough to get into the program you want to get into. If it were a little later on in life, what's your marital situation like? All those things that you're looking at, saying, I don't deal with the stress of my life very well.
Yeah.
Because compulsivity kind of behavior, which is what she's explaining here, is that's a very natural response to dealing with stuff that I don't know how to deal with.
right.
Well, I mean, just looking at this in my own life, I mean, she admits here that she has a great deal of fear and embarrassment in addressing these issues. So my question is there a lot of perfectionism that's happened in her past or in her family?
Sure.
And asking for help is a sign of weakness. Another thing is, was there a lot of maybe, very extreme religious views regarding sex, and
Yes.
so now she's also dealing with that. I know those were something in my case.
Relationships with parents, relationship with siblings, relationship with with significant others in their lives, all those things that add to some level of stress that cause us then to say, I want to escape all of this. I want to get away from all of that.
Well, and it's really amazing how even a small thing can become such a huge thing that we're running away from. Example, just recently, even though I've done a lot of work, I've been struggling with writing, and I didn't think that was a huge deal. And I was doing kind of a relapse chain, finding out, why am I struggling with writing? That's just a normal basic thing. I love doing that. And it goes all the way back to when I was in 3rd grade. I wrote this story. I wrote the story. I did all the drawings for it because it was a homework assignment. And we were to read this story that we created to the kindergartners and the 1st graders. And I just thought it was amazing. I created this story. It was this fascinating thing. The kids loved it. I went home. I showed it to my mother. And she looked and goes, "Oh, this is crap." And then throws it in the trash can. And, there was some part of me that came back up for, and I've been struggling with writing. And it's amazing how something like that can go all the way back.
Yeah.
And so it might be, there could be some, I'm not saying it's that, but it's amazing how if you sit down and do some of this work, you can find those threads that lead back to some event.
There's usually some kind of trauma or abuse, or there's always underlying issues of some kind.
Yeah.
Particularly, from what I understand, particularly with women in addiction.
Yeah, men are a little more calloused and don't necessarily can't think through those emotional experiences well enough to remember them. Women, on the other hand, I believe do, and she'll have a lot
Probably
better
overwhelmed
success
by them.
Yes, but seem to have a little more ability to be able to tap back into some of those things and how significant they were in her life. So those are places to start.
Yeah, definitely look for a 12-step group that can help you. We've offered multiple suggestions, so you can still be, anonymous. They don't need to know who you are.
There would be the one exception to that would be finding a sponsor or something like that to be able to help. And I think that just the ability to get this out in the open a little bit, to talk to somebody who completely understands your situation, will be remarkably helpful.
You're going to find very quickly that when you can get to the point that you can open up and share a lot of these things, that you're going to find out that you are very much not alone.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that is huge.
That was one of the
Huge
biggest
piece,
things for me when I first went to 12-step. I was so afraid.
Right.
Like, what if I see someone that I know?
Yeah.
And I did. I ended up seeing someone I knew, and it actually became one of the greatest things possible for me. So it's not the end. You're going to find other people. They can relate to you very easy. They have the same problems. And if you go to one that's all women, you're going to be able to connect with them and realize they're struggling too. And they may end up being probably one of your biggest supporters or
Biggest blessing in their life,
yeah,
for sure.
a huge blessing. And this is your foundation, your support system.
And I promise in time that if you do this kind of stuff, you'll be a support to them.
Yeah.
You'll be a blessing in their lives as well.
Yeah, absolute truth. Absolute truth. So those are some of the first immediate things. I think also that she would benefit tremendously from a connection with a counselor.
Yeah.
Somebody, again, who's qualified and trained in this particular area and understands women's issues, focusing their CSAT training and their CSAT practice on women's issues.
Yeah.
Because no doubt about it, I think women and men approach this problem from that entirely different perspectives.
Definitely.
So, although there may be some striking similarities, there are going to be different reasons for which a woman would engage in this kind of behavior that a man would, and so
as well as even unwinding.
that's right.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest thing would be, you're not sicker. You're not a monster. You're not whatever it is that you are telling yourself. You've come to this, this place.
Honestly,
by
the way. Yeah.
And you need help. It's no different than, some other injury. Let's say you broke an arm. What would you do? you would go find help. You'd seek help from a doctor or someone that is trained to repair your arm. You know, you're not going to try to mend it on your own.
Right.
I mean, maybe if you're in the woods, you'll find some sticks and that and brace it temporarily, but you're still going to go to that doctor.
Right.
You know, it's no different with this addiction. You need someone that can help you, that knows the right ways to do it. And I know all of us have been there where we all, you know, we want to be isolated. We don't want to let anyone know, but the more we do that, the worse it gets.
Right. Right.
You know, and when we finally reach out and step out into the light, we find that, wow, I can breathe.
Right.
There's other people that get me, and you know, it makes it a little bit easier to take the next step forward and the next one.
Yeah, that's a nice place to be.
I actually love her. I love the honesty of her final line. This is Sarah. Yet I think I'm a sex addict and I really struggle with this. And that why I love that is because that is such an honest and pure comment.
Yes, it is.
I remember for the longest time, in fact, our common counselor will still joke a little bit about the fact that I, a month or two into my sessions with him, I was still thinking he was the crazy one, not me. Such a different perspective from Sarah than my own experience, if that makes sense. The honesty and purity of saying, I'm really struggling here. I've got some problems. I need to get this resolved, and I think I'm dealing with some stuff here, versus my approach to things of always deny.
Yeah,
so she's in a great place.
She's
But-
already doing some really good step
She
one
really
work.
is.
Yeah.
She really
I mean,
is.
it's a very interesting parallel. I mean, our last episode, we had a gentleman that emailed us, and he's like, "Am I really one?" And we have Sarah here going, "I am
know,
one,
I am one."
and I'm struggling."
Yeah, this is really hard.
It's really interesting, the difference. But both of them are in a really tough spot, and both of them they're reaching out. They're reaching out for help, which is again, like Gary said, it's a huge step forward.
Right.
And this is a big moment for you.
Yeah.
I'm really quite proud of you. It's no mean feat to even take the step that you've taken already.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's at this point, really, it's to some extent, it's downhill from here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
now making a connection with a couple of people, making a connection with a counselor, moving forward in the right direction, but admitting to yourself and to us that you're really struggling with this particular thing that's a big piece of the battle.
It is.
The first step back is the hardest.
That's right.
It really is.
So this is remarkable. I hope, Sarah, that you'll keep in touch with us. I hope that you'll reach out again and let us know that what you decided to do and where you decided to go and what kind of help you're moving forward with, and make us part of your recovery path. We'd love to hear from you and love to interact with you and hear your successes. I will tell you that from my own perspective, that this podcast and my own recovery experiences that I share with others and those that share with me become a big part of my own recovery.
Yeah.
It's a big piece of all of that.
I mean, it really would be fascinating to see where you're at in 3 months.
Right.
And, I'm sure if you dedicate the time, man, your life is going to be so different than it is right now.
So true. So true. I can say also, just from my own experience, that a continued travel down this path, that it's nothing but pain and heartache.
Yeah.
That I can say.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's anybody that's an exception to that. I think
to continue down the path of addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't find that anybody that it's only a matter of time before it hits them and hits them hard.
Yeah.
So a good place to be to say, hey, I'm recognizing this is troubling to me.
Yeah. Well,
Besides, who wants to be plagued all the time with the idea, the constant idea of I want to act out, I want to act.
Yeah.
That's mind numbing. I've been there.
That's a really good way to phrase that. It's mind numbing.
It really is.
Well, that's kind of the whole point of it, right?
Yeah. Well, great topic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah, thank you so much for reaching out to us. Please keep us in the loop and let us know how you're doing. We wish you the very best of luck. And this is the 12th Step Podcast. This is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
And this is Mike to you, Sarah, saying, find the peace that recovery can bring. Do the work. Do the work to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Daniel saying, find the humility in your recovery and take that first step.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.